And we are live. What's up, everyone? One moment. What's up, everyone? My name is Fitz. I am the host of the Let's Argue podcast. And tonight we are going to be talking about systemic racism. And we're going to be reacting to a couple clips that go over the topic, mainly Charlamagne's recent interview with Vivek Ramaswamy. For those of you who don't know, he was running for president of the United States on the Republican side. He recently dropped out of the race. And now he's backing Donald Trump. And he's been to the Breakfast Club, I think, before. He's been on he's been on a lot of interviews, CNN, all the other major platforms, just debating. And so I really think it'll be interesting to dive in deeper. They do have a pretty interesting discussion about systemic racism, and just want to cover that. We're also going to be going into just what is systemic racism and other things like that, diving deeper into the topic. And for those of you new to the channel, if you have not been by the merch store, make sure you go by the merch store. The information is in the description. I've also put a link in the live chat so you can go by the merch store. We have shirts, we have hoodies, we have long sleeves. So make sure you go check out the merch. You can also show support by Cash Apping. I'll put the Cash App up. You can show support by Cash Apping. The Cash App is $ Peace and Love 93, $ Peace and Love 93. If you want to show support for the channel and send a Cash App, greatly appreciated. All right, let's get into it. So first, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to go over just briefly, and we're going to revisit it, right? I'm going to go over what is systemic racism, because it comes up in the conversation. So I just want to give a working definition of what it is that we are talking about here when we talk about systemic racism. All right, so I pulled up a definition of what systemic racism is, and we're going to be going over that definition. So let me share my screen real quick so that we can go over that definition, so that there's a framework to what systemic racism is. Okay, so right here, what are we talking about? Definitions, okay? This is racism. Racism is the relegation of people of color to inferior status and treatment based on unfounded beliefs about innate inferiority, as well as unjust treatment and oppression of people of color, whether intended or not. Okay, so that's the basic definition. Now, I know that there's some people that will read that definition and say, well, based on this definition, white people are the only ones that can really be racist. Other groups of people cannot be racist, right? That is true. That based on this I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with that. Based on this definition, only people of color can be or cannot be, or only white people can be racist, based on how I'm reading this. Okay. So if we go down, systemic racism is so embedded in systems that it is often assumed to reflect the natural, inevitable order of things. Slavery, explicitly supported by laws, endured for 250 years in the United States and was followed by almost 100 years of Jim Crow. Okay, so that just gives you an example. So here's where we really get into it, okay? Racial inequality reflects the continued existence of racial structure in society. He noted, in contrast with the Jim Crow period, the structures maintaining contemporary racial oppression are increasingly covert, meaning that they're hidden beneath the surface and are embedded in normal operations of institutions, avoid direct racial terminology and are invisible to most whites. All right. So here are a couple examples, right? And we're going to revisit this. I'm not going to get into much of it right now because I really want to start just reviewing the clip. I know that's why people are going to tune in. So here are a couple examples. Political disempowerment. So there's political, there's segregation, there's financial practices, there's environmental injustice, criminal justice systems. So essentially, and we'll circle back to this, right? Essentially, racism is, or systemic racism is racism that is embedded into society that seeks to maintain social order, economic order by perpetuating systems and practices that keep white people at the top and keep Black and pretty much everyone else below them. It's the idea is that systemic racism seeks to maintain white privilege and white power. That is the fundamental definition and the way that systemic racism is described in the literature today. So it's important when we have this discussion, and we're definitely going to get into the video, but it's important when we have this discussion to look at the facts, right? To look at the facts and really understand what is systemic racism and how does it impact you. So one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to get into victim mentality. We're going to get into culture. We're going to get into systemic racism versus personal choice. And we're also going to tackle something known as disparities, right? And disparities, for those of you who don't know, we'll go into it deeper a little later, but disparity is essentially where there's a difference between phenomena, or there's a difference between variables. So for instance, some may say like Black people only have X percentage of wealth and white people have 10 times as much wealth as Black people. There's a disparity, and so therefore that must mean that there's something systemic going on. That's the argument that someone who is saying systemic racism is at the basis of that would make. There's a disparity between white and Black people in this category, so systemic racism must be playing a role in that. So that's an example of disparity. We're going to get into that a little deeper. I think that should be a very, very interesting conversation. And yeah, but without further ado, we got co-host Ty in the building. T, he going by T tonight.
T. Oh, I didn't even see it change that. My
going
bad.
by T.
Let me fix
How
that.
you feeling? Let the people know who you are.
Oh, I can't even fix that.
For those of you tuning
in. I can't even fix that on there. That's a typo. Anyways, what up, beautiful people? This is your boy Ty. Catch me at Instagram _Wolfwagon_ for all your dog training tips, needs, all that good stuff about your doggos. Yeah, we're here to talk about something important tonight. Very important to me because I'm in this field that deals with some of those things. So it should be a good convo.
It's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful conversation. So I don't know if you heard my little intro, but what do you think of when you hear systemic racism?
White
Just
people.
before we get into it, what do you think?
White people.
And what?
White people, white moms playing. Systemic racism to me, or how I've heard it taught, right? Because in our fields they teach about it in undergrad and graduate school, mainly undergrad. General definition is systemic racism is keeping the non-dominant groups where they're at and elevating the dominant group to be at a different level. So kind of a difference is in playing field, more or less.
So in this example, white people being the dominant group, keeping white people in power.
I guess you could say, yeah, to an extent, because when you, depending on, I think the setting, it differs, right? So if we're talking just generalize what America's been based on, yes, we know that it's been based on white supremacy and keeping white people above everybody else. Now, if we're talking like schools and medical, there's people who look like you and I that are a part of that dominant group as well. So it depends on what we're talking about, but as a general, we can say that America was built on white supremacy. We can agree on that one.
Okay, so I don't want to tackle too much before we review the video, so I'm going to jump right into the video. What we're going to do, a little more organized tonight. We're going to go over it. We're going to review this video, react to it. There's a couple videos I want to react to. Then we're going to dive into deeper questions surrounding systemic racism, things like that, culture, victim mentality, personal choice. But let's jump right into the video and start reacting, because I've been waiting on this.
Shout out to that boy. What's his name? Vivek. Is that how you say it?
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah. Intelligence, boy.
All right. We out here. I got the timestamps tonight, boy. I'm ready.
Shout out to the old boy that was complaining about that.
Or let me see. Where did I? No, this is just the timestamps on the video that we're reviewing. Like, I looked it up, and
I love it.
I got okay.
Boy, you don't got a full beard now. You just shaved last week.
I know.
Hey, you
crazy.
He's Arabic. He's Arabic, guys. He's not black.
Hey.
Or Middle Eastern. Arabic's not a. I guess it's not a race. Boy, that boy got a forehead. Jesus. I haven't seen him in a minute. So wow. Is this recent?
Yeah, this was a couple days ago.
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
Self-governance, free speech, open debate, that you get to speak your minds openly as long as I get to in return.
You know, we weren't included in none of that, though. Black people, brown people like yourself.
Yeah.
Beige people like Envy. We were never included.
I'm black,
but,
sir.
but let's individuals. Stop. Actually, my first job was in New York City at the hedge fund worked. An invasion across our own border sooner than we're using it to protect an invasion across somebody else's border.
Okay.
I don't think that's too much to ask. But the fact that that's controversial, both in the mainstream media narrative of American politics today, and even in the Republican Party, says that, yes, the thing we need to decide in the Republican Party is not me or Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley versus Donald Trump. Forget the personalities. Who are we and what do we actually stand for? I think the Republican Party should become the party of 1776. The party that says, we stand for the ideals of the American Revolution. Self-governance, free speech, open debate, that you get to speak your minds openly as long as I get to in return.
You know, we weren't included in none of that, though. Black people, brown people like yourself.
Yeah.
Beige people like Envy. We were never included.
I'm black, sir.
But let's celebrate the progress we have made towards the
Colorism.
So what do you think of when you hear that? Like, what comes to mind?
I mean, based on those principles, and if we're sticking to fighting the topic of what he just said, I'm for it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about Charlamagne? Kind of, I took it as veering off and getting away from the topic, where he says we weren't included in that in the beginning. That seems like a distraction, to be honest. That doesn't really seem relevant to what they're talking about. What do you think?
Yeah, he's not fighting the topic. He's obviously, it's his job to create controversy, right? It's his job to say that, because if he didn't say that, then they're gonna be like, oh, you didn't say we were this, we were that. I also think it stems from kind of a victim mentality of keeping us down and saying that we can't do those things. You know, I'm tired of hearing, well, we weren't a part of that. Okay, but even before, and again, this is what people fail to realize. Before colonization, Black and brown people were part of their own nations. They were sovereign, what they say now, sovereign citizens, where they have their own government, they have their own rules, their own laws. those type of things. So we already had this before it became popular. So why are we still pushing a narrative of being I don't even want to say slaves because I don't even feel like that's appropriate. Why do we keep pushing this narrative of that we're incapable of doing things ourselves? That's why a lot of the reasons of the BS that we have now is because of that. Because we don't know how to get out of that mentality of, well, we weren't a part of that. We were slaves. We were this. We were that. Like, are you a slave now?
Well, okay. So I feel what you're saying.
Are you a slave, Robert?
I'm personally not a slave.
Okay.
But I can understand from a certain perspective why he says what he says. It's multifaceted. One, I do believe that there's a large population of people, not just black people, white people, all people who are uninformed about history. They don't really know what goes. They know the talking points of history, and they know the talking points of what happened. So anytime we mention 1776 or the founding fathers, it automatically gets turned into, well, they were racist, they owned slaves, all these other things, right? And so what I like to look at is, all right, how can we break this down and use it? So when he's talking about the ideas of what America was founded on, that goes in one ear and out the other, because all people are focused on was, well, slavery existed back then and slaves were never meant to be free. Slaves were never meant to enjoy the privileges and benefits of being an American citizen. Now, I can understand from a certain perspective how a system built on disenfranchising and not including people may be an inferior system to one that included them to begin with, right? I can understand that perspective. But Charlamagne, I think he did a poor job of articulating it, and he just goes, well, we were never meant to be included in that, or we weren't included in that. He didn't even say we weren't meant to. He said we were not included in that. So let me rewind it, because I know there's a few people watching.
Let me ask you this. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name. I will learn it. Is Vivek, is he from the States?
Yes.
Okay, so he grew up here. He's from here.
Yeah.
Culturally, is different from, what's his cultural background?
Well, I think he's Indian.
Okay.
But he grew up as an Indian here.
Right, yeah. So he's an American. So okay. I just wanted to clear that up for anybody, just in case they're like, well, he's not even from here. He's from India. But he was born here. He grew up here. His cultural background is he's Indian. Okay, go ahead.
So this is, for those of you tuning in, this is what
the thing we need to decide in the Republican Party is not me or Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley versus Donald Trump. Forget the personalities. Who are we and what do we actually stand for? I think the Republican Party should become the party of 1776. The party that says we stand for the ideals of the American.
Now, if you don't know history, if your only understanding of 1776 is they owned slaves in 1776, then I can understand how that would elicit an emotional response, especially if you don't hear what he says afterwards, and somebody like me, a content creator, maybe you want to get some views, you just cut that part of the clip out and you just get him saying we need to return and be the party of 1776. If your political knowledge is limited to only thinking that 1776 was all about slavery, then you miss what was actually going on in 1776 in the broader context. You miss the American Revolution. You miss the fact that America was created because they revolted against a system that disenfranchised people and that really wasn't working for those people. So they fought for a new system, right? You miss all of that and you just focus on the 1776 part. So I just wanted to clarify for people, because that tends to happen.
American Revolution, self-governance, free speech, open debate, that you get to speak your minds openly as long as I get to in return.
You know, we weren't included in none of that, though. Black people, brown people like yourself.
Yeah.
Beige people like Envy. We were never included.
I'm black,
but let's celebrate the progress we have made towards those ideals. Because here's the thing about the United States of America. We're a nation founded of, I don't mean this as a joke. We're not a nation of gods. We're a nation of men. The difference between man and God is that man is imperfect. Yet we're a nation still founded on ideals.
But only white
So that
men
means you're
founded those
always-
ideas. That's the problem.
That's in the past, man.
That's not in the past. You know, the other day, I can't remember the site where they said
I think that
they're referred to as a 7-Eleven worker at white.
Now, pay attention to this, because I have a problem with this. People right now, DJ Envy is trying to make Vivek, he's trying to make him a victim. Watch this, because this has happened to me so many times in my life. This has happened to me so many times in my life where people have tried to victimize me and I didn't feel like a victim. Watch what he does right here.
I can't remember the site where they said
I think that
they're referred to as a 7-Eleven worker at the White House.
Oh, the Babylon Bee.
Yeah, like
This is
and that's
satire.
a right-wing conservative
This is
site.
satire.
but that's how they look at us. That ain't satire. That's how they look at you, and that's how they look at us.
Can I
How
just
does
say,
that make you feel?
what
See right there. It's like, so for context, essentially what had happened was they were Babylon Bee. I don't know if you've heard of it. They do like satire, joking around.
Is it like a website or like a Instagram page?
Yeah, it's like a website.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it, but I understand the reference.
They were pretty much they made a joke or whatever about him being a 7-Eleven worker. And in the interview right here, they're pretty much saying, hey, look, you're a victim. You're a victim. They said something about you looking like a 7-Eleven worker because 7-Eleven workers, a lot of them may be Indian or whatever. That's the stereotype.
Jerry. Jeremy. Mahalo, Jerry.
We got Jerry in the building. What's up? But yeah, he was saying pretty much, look, I took that as a joke. I'm not a victim here. And they're like, no, you're a victim. And imagine talking to your child like that, right? Imagine your child is like, I don't really believe my race is holding me back. And you're like, your race is holding you back. It's holding me back. It's holding us all back. That's kind of what they're saying here is like, look, you're a victim. You should feel victimized. You don't feel like a victim. Something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
What do you think? It was a joke. I took it as a joke. It actually, if you read into the article, which I did, it was actually poking fun at a lot of the left-wing self-awareness here. What do you think Martin Luther King would say? We just had MLK Day. We celebrated. That was the day of the Iowa caucus. What do you think he would say about where we are as a country today? He said, I hope my 4 children grow up in a country where they're judged not on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. When he said that about 60 years ago, and he woke up to the country, let's say he just teletransported to the country we're in right now, do you think he would say that, oh my gosh, we have regressed, or that, oh, I'm very upset about where we've landed, or he sees a country where everybody's able to go to the ballot box and cast their vote? Anybody's able to start a business. Is everybody starting from the same place? No.
There's a lot of voter suppression that keeps black people.
I'm asking you a question, though. If you just snap of a finger from 1963 or 1964, whenever it was,
he would say there's
about 60 years
he would
ago.
say there's progress,
But it's still a lot of
I
work to
think
do.
he would say,
but people
this
are still
is,
being judged by the
I
color
think
of
it's
their
this
still
is
a lot
as
of work to
close
do.
to the, and so is there racism today? Yes, there is. Of course there is. I have a theory on how to deal with it at this point,
Ooh,
which is different
do tell.
from 1960, which is different from 1870, but today.
So I do want to stop right here and add a little bit of commentary. It's interesting that when Vivek is talking and asking a very specific question about what would Martin Luther King think about the progress that's been made, Charlamagne's focused on, voter suppression, but he doesn't really give any examples of voter suppression. He just kind of throws these buzzwords out there. Voter suppression. The voter suppression that when I've done my research, the biggest thing that I'm seeing, one, gerrymandering, which that is an issue. But the main talking point is you need an ID to vote. That's what people are like fighting against. We shouldn't need an ID to vote. Many black people don't have an ID. If you can't go get an ID, so that they know that the person writing something on the paper or pressing the button is the actual person that's registered to vote. How are you driving? He said I should call myself Jerry.
That's why I started laughing before.
That was a secret little jab at Jerry right there. Why are you suppressing votes out here, Jerry? Come on. Nah, but it's just interesting how he keeps on, like, I don't know, just throwing out these buzzwords because he knows his target audience. I'll give him that. The Breakfast Club knows their target audience.
Yeah.
All right.
You playing more of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's different stages in a nation's life, I think, require different responses.
So how would you deal with it? Because obviously
I
they
think
said there's no
right
racism.
now-
This is not a racist country.
Look at this.
So I think
Look how lazy this dude look.
response.
So how would you deal with it? Because obviously
I think
Look at that. That's so disrespectful. If I'm talking to you,
Why he got that chair? That chair.
how is like just look at the body language right there. He's talking to another human being, and he's, how would you deal with race? It's like you're not even interested in the conversation. You've already made your mind up, or you're not even willing to engage. At least Charlamagne's sitting up and he's going back and forth. DJ Envy like acting like he don't even want the dude there, like he tired or something. Like, how would you deal with racism?
Yeah.
It's
I think we have to shine a light to them too, because this is the same tactics that are used today of like you give somebody solutions, but then they say, "Oh, we're still victims." But it's like I'm laying out the solutions for you to have to better your life. And I think for DJ Envy, I think he's so detached from racism at a micro level because of his status, economic status, that he has no clue, and that he tries to include himself a part of that. You may experience colorism from Charlamagne. He may be joking, he may be serious, I don't know. But to sit there and say, well, you know, here we go with another person say they can end racism, it's like, bro, you're not even in the conversation. You got money and you finesse all the people, all these people who look like you, right? You finesse them out of all that money, scamming them and doing all those things. And you're sitting up here acting like you're on a, you know, like you're poor or something. You're poor. You're broke. You know what I'm saying? Like that's weird to me. That's a weird energy to give off because it's like
I watched this. I was at the gym earlier. I watched a lot of this. So this isn't my first time seeing it. The way Vivek is about to break it down probably makes the most sense to me in terms of the way that someone has broken it down and like the way they articulate it and make it understandable for the regular person.
Let me ask you about his background. All right, just for more context for people.
Okay.
Do you know about his background at all? Do you know anything? Like,
So,
he grew up, you know, middle class.
He grew up in Ohio.
Okay.
He's a billionaire. He spent $30 million of his own money funding his campaign. He's a biotech billionaire. Father, husband.
Okay. What about his life growing up?
I think he said they grew up pretty much with no money.
Okay.
And he pretty much worked his way up to being CEO and of his company and stuff like that, and biotech company. So that's pretty much my knowledge of his background. Is he grew up poor, worked hard, very entrepreneurial, and became a billionaire.
Okay. I just want to make sure because I don't want people to be like, oh, he's pointing out his ass. That's not true. He grew up here, guys. And if you live in Ohio, and anybody who's lived in Ohio, and I've lived there, went there in high school to probably one of the smallest cities or little towns in Ohio, and it's not for the weak-hearted. Like, you definitely have to be a lot more than you would have to be in a place that's more progressive. Ohio is not a very progressive state. Still very poor, still a lot of drugs, you know, there's a lot of negative things to it. So for him to be able to overcome a lot of that, plus probably a little bit of racism here and there, 7-Eleven jokes, middle, red dot, middle of your forehead type of stuff.
Which let's clear something up. I want to clear something up right now. Okay, I want to clear this up. Racism is something specific, but when you make racism everything, it means nothing. Okay, like racism is something very specific where you believe or you behave in a way where you think that you're superior to somebody because of your race and because of their race. That is very different than making a joke. I've made jokes about my own family. Am I a familyist? Like, what does that mean? I make jokes about myself. I'm a Fitzist. Like what?
A Marxist.
Right? Like what? Yeah. I mean, what does that make me then? Because there's a difference between behaving in a way where you're saying that you're superior to a person because of their race, and then making a joke that's based on a stereotype. Those are very different things. Slave owners and people back then, they did not believe black people and white people were equal. Like that was the difference. They dehumanized black people, and it wasn't just you're slaves, it was you're not even humans. They believed they were superior. Because somebody makes a joke about me when someone turns the lights off and they go, where's Fitz? That doesn't necessarily mean they're racist. Yes, you are a Marxist. Jerry, yeah. You know what? Hold up. I'll be right back. I got something for you, Jerry.
You about to get him started, bro. You about to get this man started. He loves this, man. I'm telling you, he loves this. You make Fitz a better person, man. I'm telling you. Oh, this boy going crazy. He probably finna put on that mask. Oh man. He finna go crazy.
All right. There you go, Jerry. Is this what you want?
Yeah. This guy, man.
Look what you
Much
made.
love, bro. Much love. I thought he's about to put on the mask, bro.
Nah. Also, Jerry, I got that the Audible you recommended, The Law. I'm about halfway through it right now. Definitely very interesting. Definitely have to have a conversation in the future about it. But where were we? Where were we before Jerry called me a communist and I had to?
You were talking about racism being, your family.
Right. Racism does not necessarily. Racism is where people think that they're superior to you, and systemic racism, in particular, is where government, community, different stakeholders do things to hold white people or whatever group of people are in power based on race, right? That's essentially what it is.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Push back on that after this.
Okay.
So there's no
right
racism.
now,
It's not a racist country.
So I think right now, I'm not saying this is the answer 60 years ago, but right now, today, I think the right answer is actually to let it atrophy to irrelevance. It's like the equivalence. I'm a biologist by background. That's my background. If a virus gets so low, right? Racism is the virus. If it gets so low in the bloodstream at a certain point, the natural host immune system can just take care of it and it atrophies to irrelevance. But sometimes the way people actually die, COVID is an example of this. The way people die of a virus isn't actually from the effect of the virus. It's from an overactive immune system that kills the very host organ in the name of fighting a virus long after it's gone. And I think that that's close to what we're happening in this country with the fight against racism is we are creating new racism today that I believe would not exist if we at a certain point would say we're going to let it go and move on.
Give us an example. Yeah, give us
right there. Like I've had many discussions about racism. I've never heard somebody break it down like that from like a biologist perspective. You know, even when you're fighting, when your immune system is fighting a virus, at a certain point, look at Jerry.
Yo,
That's not what you've been saying, Jerry.
this guy. So I'm gonna push back. I'm gonna push back on your point before we started the video.
Okay.
Just now. Do you view racism as just, you know, what we've been taught, like black and white, or is it across the board for gender, for people who are disabled? Like, are you including all of them or just black and white?
In terms of when you say including all of them, are you talking about in racism or?
Yeah, and racism, not we know it happens in systemic racism, but I'm talking about just on the low level. So when you think of racism, do you think of just like people hating another culture, or is it a group of people?
And when you're talking about gender and stuff like that, how does that tie in?
Well, I mean, I think a little bit of new racism that he's talking about, and I guess it could fall under that, of this trend of men and women shaming themselves, shaming men for not being this, and this, or
I think that's separate.
Okay.
Racism is something that's very distinct, just like sexism is distinct, racism is distinct. Now, there is something called intersectionality, where when you're doing an analysis, you're seeing how these different components like racism, sexism, or gender, or, you know, disability, socioeconomic status, how these things intersect and then manifest. But they are definitely distinct things that exist on their own, but also in tandem with other things. So I look at racism as something very distinct. To your second question, I think racism happens on an individual level. Sexism can happen on an individual level, but also on a systemic level. It just depends. We're gonna get into later, though.
Yeah,
is something, or I'll save it for later because I don't want to.
I just wanted to clarify for the people who watch this back that aren't live, because, you know, somebody might say, well, people are racist against me because I'm handicapped, or, you know, they've taken racism back then and kind of turned it into something new now. Because when he says new racism, that's interesting, because I've thought about that.
This goes into what we were talking about, and he's going to get into it with like DEI and stuff like that. But this was kind of what we had like a discussion about, and he's going to get into it, and then we could kind of go back and forth.
That's fine.
And if you want to join the chat, as always, the link is in the description or in the chat. It's up there. Let's keep reviewing this.
What's new racism? New anti-black racism.
Huh?
A new wave of anti-black racism that I think is beginning in this country because of people's feeling that they are being denied something on the basis of their skin color in the name of these DEI policies. I think that's actually exists today.
OG anti-black racism just never.
I'm not talking about
away.
OG. I'm talking about Gen 2 is what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I'll give you an example. I ran a company.
Give us an example, because I'm lost.
I've run a company, and I've both in my campaigns and my companies, and I don't say this like, oh, I hired black people or black women and put them in roles of positions. I don't care what skin color they are.
Mm-hmm.
But it so happens that in multiple of my companies, enterprises, businesses, even the campaign, people in significant positions of authority leadership happen to be black, and black women included. All right, so what? They're the best people for the job is why I put them there. And one of my companies, I mean, you it turns out was one of the highest paid, if not highest paid person at the company. Okay. You hear what the other people will say who weren't as good to get that job, which is to say, oh, she only got that job because she's a black woman, which is unfair to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfair to the company. It's unfair to the people who led the company to make meritocratic decisions. And yet they are able to say that and have that impression because we do live in a corporate America where pharmaceutical companies and other companies say that we need to have quota systems that 25% of our workforce in vice president ranks or above need to be people of a certain skin color.
So this kind of ties into a conversation that we had a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get your thoughts on this because we had this discussion online and offline, and we talked about DEI in depth But one of the things that had come up was you were saying that you thought that pretty much all people who were Black or people of color or woman or whatever that could be considered DEI are DEI hires. And it sounds like what he's saying is that when Black people are actually hired for the job and they're qualified, that then there's a new racism that says, well, you only got hired because of DEI, not because of your talents and skills. What do you think about that?
So I like this concept of new racism because when I grew up, and again, I grew up in the 90s, so we weren't really too far out from
you. When you say you like it, what do you mean? Just to clarify.
I like the concept that he's talking about. I like how he's bringing it to light because a lot of people don't understand that that's a thing because they're doing it without knowing it's new racism. I grew up with the OG racism where it was like it was embedded in people because they didn't have the knowledge or they were ignorant. It wasn't simply just because they wanted to hate another group, which a lot of them had to. It went off their character and who they were.
That's the OG racism, not wanting to hate.
To me, that's how I interpret it. To me, not these definitions that we have now. To me, that's how I interpret it. Because with those people, it was more about your character than it was the actual racism part. It was just more of you didn't have any idea or have an open mind, which people had to eventually look at themselves in the mirror and be like, am I the problem? This person's a nice person, but I'm saying, he's this, he's that, or she's this, she's that because of what other people are saying. But
so I want to try to understand because when I think of OG, I think of original.
Yep.
And when I think of the original racism, I think of you guys are 3/5 human, your chattel slavery, genocide, colonization, all of these things used to justify the dehumanization of Black people. That's what I think of. And then alongside that, educating the general public to believe and think that Black people are inherently inferior to white people. And as we move into like the 1900s and you see like racism, the definitions start to shift from thinking you're superior to somebody to you just don't really know them and you're basing it off of stereotypes.
Right.
That's prejudice. Racism is where you actually believe you're superior to somebody because of your race and because of their race. That's very different than like I don't hang out with a bunch of people from the Philippines and I saw somebody on TV that's I think Filipino or whatever, and then I just have that information to go off of. That's very different than thinking I'm superior to them. But those things get mixed up. So, for example, people will be like, "Oh, Fitz, we made a joke about you having a big nose or something. That's racist." It's like, do you think you're superior to me? No, we just made a joke. It was funny. Then I don't consider that racist. So I think the original racism is different than what many people mistake for being prejudiced or stereotyping somebody, which stereotypes are just making assumptions about somebody based on limited information that may be rooted in racism. It's rooted in racism that Black people are less intelligent than white people. That's rooted in racism, but your limited information on a different culture, or me saying, "Oh, I like guacamole," and I'm trying to make some guacamole. Now all of a sudden I'm racist because I posted a video of making guacamole and I'm not Guatemalan or South American or whatever. That I just want some guacamole with some chips. I don't think I'm superior to another group of people because of that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, it's a tactic because living in a state that really, especially the city I was living in, people of color, especially Black people, weren't really allowed there probably until the 1900s. I mean, maybe even later in the 1900s, they were barely allowed to be there. So when I say OG racism, I'm mainly referring to the tactics that they employed back then. I still experienced a little bit of both. Maybe more of it was prejudice, right? But I also experienced a lot of racism going to Ohio because it wasn't prejudice then. It was more aggressive than what it was what I experienced living in Florida. So I like that he's bringing some of the new things that we have to light, and you might have to rewind that part. I need to see what his point was again because I lost train of thought because we were talking about that. Yeah, just rewind a little bit.
Or to the people who led the company to make meritocratic decisions, and yet it's unfair to say, "Oh, okay." You hear what the other people.
I got it. We're good.
Turns out was one of the highest to get that. It's unfair to the company. It's unfair to the people who led the company to make meritocratic decisions, and yet they are able to say that and have that impression because we do live in a corporate America where pharmaceutical companies and other companies say that we need to have quota systems that 25% of our workforce in vice president ranks or above need to be people of a certain skin color. Imagine if we didn't say that, but we just did it by merit. We would probably get to the same place or something darn close to it anyway.
People wouldn't do it for
but
merit.
without that second wave of race. I'm telling you, out of my self-interest is why I did it, right?
But the reason,
I grew up in this country, came from nothing, built multi-billion-dollar businesses in part by hiring the best person for the job.
yes, but guess
So
what?
it was self-interest that guided me to do it.
Yeah, but the reason they have to have those 25% quotas is because of systemic and structural racism.
Let me tell you, one of the best interactions I had in Iowa was with a black pastor. Not that many of them in Iowa, I promise you. He came to one of our events. First thing he says is, before I ask my question, I'm going to do a push-up challenge with you. Can you actually handle 10 push-ups? So we hit 10 push-ups on the spot. Then he asked me the hard question.
I don't believe you did 10 push-ups on the spot.
I did 10 push-ups on the
conversation. Shouldn't fall so easily to peer pressure, Vivek.
Oh, that's good. No, I had in my birthday.
All right. So
how can you just say clemency and forgiveness now?
Yeah. For the DEI part,
and for those of you who don't know what DEI is, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's an acronym that is used to describe programs who, I guess, their aim is to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in companies on the idea that certain groups of people have been disenfranchised to the point to where the only way you're going to even the playing field is by specifically going out and creating quotas to get more of these disenfranchised people into these companies in leadership roles or other roles like that. That's not a deep explanation, but just a side note. Yes, so you can.
So with that, I guess I'll think more into it, man, to see how far we've come as a society. Because we know in our previous conversations, we know that sometimes this guy.
That's right. Black power.
We
Black
know
queens forever, snow bunnies never.
this guy. Yo,
my Dr. Umar.
get him off of here. I'll have to see I'll think about how far we come as a society. Because for me personally, when I go into these job interviews in these places, whatever, get a credit card, go to the bank, whatever I do in my daily life. I'm never thinking of it as in terms of, well, they need me because I'm this. I'm more thinking of it as I have the qualifications, I have the knowledge, I got the degrees, all those things to be qualified to compete for this position, to be in the company. Maybe subconsciously I'm like, okay, well, I might be a token. Their work environment may not be diverse. And when I say diverse, I'm not talking about just color, but maybe cultural backgrounds, experiences, open-minded people. You can put it to everything. So I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a stretch sometimes, but the thing about it is that we're not dismissing it, right? I don't dismiss it. I know it's a possibility. I know it's a thing, but I never go in thinking, okay, I'm only getting this because I'm this color. Which, hey, that could be a thing. That could be a reason why I've gotten some jobs because I need to hit a quota. But I'm not going in with that mindset. Huh?
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You said you need to dive deeper into pretty much the progress that's been made.
That we done in society, yeah.
Right. Is there anything that you think you would have been able, or is there anything that you think you would have had a greater chance of doing in the 1960s than today?
Greater chance of doing.
Like getting a job, getting a mortgage,
well,
all of those things. All things considered, like all things being equal.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it would have been. I probably would have some challenges, but I don't think it would have been solely due to being racial. Might have just been because I don't have the education, the knowledge.
In the 1960s. So what I'm saying is like 1950s, 1960s, there were actual laws on the book.
Yeah.
Like, and policies that were well known that
Right.
said like Black people can't do this.
Right.
Black people can't do that. And you compare that to today where those laws are not on the book and you can get in trouble for openly doing it and having those practices. Do you think that you have more opportunity now than you would have in 1950, 1960?
Oh yeah, I mean, in terms of being in different spaces, of course, different opportunities, yeah. But I still have to. So the reason why I say I think it would have been just some challenges is because even now there's still things I have to be qualified for. Getting a job, going to school, whatever. I would have still had to have that back in the day, but I would have had to play their game in order to get those things. Because even back then, people still, they had challenges, but they started to play their game well enough that they could acquire those things. So even now, I still have to conduct myself in a way to get the things that I want, or do the things that I want to do, or be in the spaces that I want to be in. So
have you ever really played video games?
All my life. Well, up until I was probably in
all
college.
My life.
Probably post-college, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna use an example for my video game people, right? Of how I'm thinking of this, right? I look at
you answer your own question too.
Yeah.
Question, you think.
So for me, I think that there's more opportunity now than back then, and I don't think there's anything that I can do now that would have been easier for me to do back then, outside of probably doing more business with Black people, like keeping the Black dollar in the Black community, just because segregation was sanctioned by law. But the way that I'm thinking about like comparing back then to the opportunities we have now as Black people is, let's take an Xbox controller, right? You have an Xbox controller and you have your A button, your B button, your Y button, your X button. Now, in most games, that A button is going to be very crucial. And usually like the bumper part, like shooter games, those are very important buttons on the controller, right? The way I looked at what the position Black people were in like the 1950s, 1900s, let's say 1950s, 1900 to 1950, 1960s, probably up to the 1980s. I would say more so in the 1960s area. But I would say we were like an Xbox controller that like the A button didn't work, the pause button didn't work, but we had the controller. Like some of the buttons didn't work. So when we wanted to play NBA 2K and we were pressing X to go shoot, it wasn't shooting, but the other people's controllers were working. And so we're playing the same game, but the controls that we're using, they're not like the inputs we're doing, they're not getting the same outputs because those buttons aren't working. Mm-hmm. But now I think we're at a place where a majority of the buttons are working. The buttons work most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't work and you smack it a little, then it starts working again. That's where I feel like we're at right now, where the Xbox controller, the buttons, some of them wasn't working back then. But now, them buttons working. And now there's all this opportunity. Here's where the dangerous part comes in at. right? Here's where the dangerous part comes in at. When the controller's working and all the buttons are working, and people in your own community and people that want to be allies so bad to Black people just to make themselves feel better, when they tell you, don't go pick up that controller, because if you press them buttons, it's not going to shoot when you press X like they shoot. Look, that white person, he got 3 kills on Call of Duty. You're not going to get 1, right? When people are trying to encourage you to not even pick up the controller and press the buttons for yourself, or even worse, when you picked up the controller, press the buttons for yourself, see they all work, and people still tell you that controller not meant for you. Nah, you a victim. You shouldn't be picking up that controller. That when it was first made, it wasn't meant to be in Black hands. Right? So that's kind of how I view it right now. We got Jerry dropping some knowledge. Entrepreneurs get you out of all that BS. Yes, entrepreneurship, that will definitely get you out of it, because here's the thing. Here's the thing that I don't think many people understand. It's hard to run a business. It's hard to go out and put everything on the line and say, hey, look, I don't eat off of this if I don't get results. Many people don't want to operate from a results perspective. What they would rather do is complain about their white boss for 30 years, but not take a single year, not take 6 months to invest in themselves to try and go do that same thing themselves.
Right.
You're putting your success in the hands of other people and getting upset when they do a better job of funding your life than you can do yourself.
Right.
So yes, if you have the tenacity and the ability to be an entrepreneur, make up your own rules, find what works for you, that is the best bet. Honestly, that's the best bet. Although most entrepreneurial endeavors don't succeed, put your hand in it, because even if you fell at an entrepreneurial journey, you will be a much better employee and probably go up in the ranks even higher, because you can have higher level conversations. It's not emotional now. It's not emotional now. You're thinking like a boss. So now it makes sense when you see them moving the way that they're moving. I straight up asked the CEO one time, why are you the CEO? Why don't you have your own business? We were at a company dinner. I'm like, you're the CEO of this company. Why don't you have your own business? Why are you the CEO of somebody else's company building it for them? And he was real with me. He said, I don't want to risk my own money. It was like people like us, because we took a personality test and I had a similar personality to him and I'm entrepreneurial. He's like, people like us, like we're risk takers, but I'm this age, I have this family, and I don't want to take that risk. I would act differently if I was risking my own money versus the company's money. I have kids, they're almost in college, all these other things, and I still get paid a high enough amount to do everything I want to do, and I love the work, and building a business is just very stressful. So even if it's called entrepreneurship. There's entrepreneurs and entrepreneurships where you behave as an entrepreneur inside of a corporation. And if you can do that, that is also a very good thing to do. So you don't even have to go out and own your own business. You can be an entrepreneur and treat someone else's business like your own, grow it, get equity, get a larger salary, and then do that. And once you're on that path, hey, you could be set. But Jerry done got me off. I'm passionate about entrepreneurship.
Hey, yo, pause. Yo.
What happened?
Hey, brother. They got you off? What you mean, brother? Pause, brother. Yo. Yo. You trying to go over that? That's crazy.
You got me off on a tangent.
Man, and before we go back to the video, in addition to that, because people are gonna complain in the comments. What do you mean? The same now versus back then. My who I am now and the values and beliefs that I have and the things that I need I wouldn't have been competing in the rat race that they had back then either. So when you had said that, that's what I'm thinking of the perspective of who I am now. I wouldn't have needed all those things that they have, that they had then versus now as well. I'm a very simple, minimalistic type of person. So it wouldn't have been hard for me to get what I have now versus then. Because really, if you think about it, going to school, I went to school because somebody told me to go to school. If I had a choice, I probably wouldn't even attended school through past high school. Sports, thrown into sports. So everything that I've been thrown into is because somebody else wanted me to do it, not because consciously I was like, this is going to better my life. I'm very okay with just the basic necessities, living a slow lifestyle. So that's why I said that. Just want to clarify, because people are gonna talk in the comments, especially when we put the timestamps on these things. So yeah,
absolutely. And I want to go to something that Jerry had mentioned. The buttons are working, but the people don't know how to work the controller. Yeah. And if you're watching right now, you just tune in. Essentially talking about, you have the controller to life and the buttons are working, but you don't know how to use this controller. And here's another thing too. It's not even that you don't know how to work the controller, because I think that humans are naturally curious, and that there's something called self-determination theory. It's a psychological theory that says that we all have three things that we need psychologically. We need to be able to master something. We need autonomy. And I think we need to be able to connect with other people. And we need to be able to connect with other people. Fitz, you're losing your Marxist status. Hey. But here's where I'm going with that. Okay. Here's where I'm going with it. It's not even that people don't know how to work the controller. It's that when you tell them the controller works, these batteries good, these some Duracells, we just put them in there. What do they say? You're a sellout. Don't tell me the controller work. You a sellout. Oh, you a Uncle Tom now. You telling me this controller work? Well, what about what they told me? And I'm like, hey, pick the damn controller up for yourself then. I don't want to do that though, because if I pick the controller up and it works, I may not have the strength to overcome the trauma that's now going to be inside my mind when I realize I've wasted years of my life staring at a controller, staring at life, thinking that I shouldn't go apply at that job. I shouldn't go get that degree. I shouldn't go start that business because the white man's going to be there to hold me back. And it wasn't the white man that held you back. It was the white man that lives inside your consciousness that's holding you back. The idea that you have of the white man in your mind that's holding you back. So it's very, and I know what Jerry's talking about with Washington versus Du Bois. I think where he's going with this is Washington, I think he's referring to Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington, and I think everyone should read Up from Slavery. Booker T. Washington, I believe, was born into slavery, and he ended up building Tuskegee. Him and his students, they built Tuskegee with their hands. And he didn't have money, he didn't have anything, but he worked and got other people involved and built it up. W.E.B. Du Bois, I think, took more of the approach, kind of like, I would say, what modern people on the left take, more of, well, racism and we can't do it. And what you laughing about, Jerry? Am I getting this right?
You're losing your status, brother.
See, I told Jerry I wasn't a Marxist. But yeah, I think that's where he's going. But I think the other conversation we were having with DEI was me getting into the details, and I think there was a fundamental difference between what we were considering DEI and what we were talking about in that conversation. So I could see how if you're going based off the literature and just the talking points of what I was saying, it may come off as I'm a Marxist. I can see how, because I have this book, it can be that, but I'm somebody who just likes to learn, ask questions, analyze things, and take it from there. If there's something that a Marxist says that I agree with, I'll adopt it. If there's something that a Republican says, a woman says, I've gone as far as to say, if you're a racist and you make the best peach cobbler, give me a piece. Just don't spit in it. Just don't spit in it. If you think you superior to me, as long as I know you ain't spitting my food, give me some of that, right? So I'm all about the information. I can learn from anybody, and yeah.
Okay. Look at Fitz getting some self-development in. Yo,
just trying to do what I do. All right, let's
this guy do what I do. That's gonna be a thumbnail right there. Do what I do.
And now I'm gonna say some things that might make you upset. But then you could have a bunch of other people that make a claim on something that they were wrong with, or Japanese people who are in internment camps, or Jewish Americans, or anybody else. We can all play that game, and then
the reason you need DEI
and then it becomes a currency
is because of systemic and structural racism. Can you admit or just agree that this country, there is systemic and structural racism in this country?
I have to know what those terms mean, Charlamagne, to be able to answer.
You don't know what systemic racism is? You just used it. You used it a little while ago.
I said racism.
You said systemic and structural racism. You said structural racism.
In stating the argument for the other side of what's used. I don't think systemic racism, it's a little bit of a cop-out, right? I know what racism is.
We know there's inequalities in the healthcare system. We know there's inequalities in the justice system. We know these things already.
So has there historically been in this country? Yes, there has.
Yes.
Right? And I think that what we want to do is
we had a whole
eliminate
civil rights movement.
Right. And actually, a lot of what I'm standing for example, is I think that there are civil rights inequalities right now when it comes to your political beliefs. I think that that's actually something that exists right now. So the same FBI that was going after Martin Luther King 60 years ago on the basis of incorrectly collected tape.
So I think with this one, we kind of covered everything that, they're going to get into some other stuff. But let me see. This one was the most replayed.
Talk about just the project of uniting this country. And right now we have a major divide in this country. And at a certain point, we're going to have to look 360 degrees across the board and say, all right, we're all laying down arms. We're going to agree to be one nation. We're going to agree to disagree on the issues where we disagree most profoundly, to say that we are still going to be bound by a common set of principles as Americans. Take abortion, right? This is one where they say there's going to divide the country to a breaking point. I've stood for policy, and it's a mystery to me. I'm the only Republican who has advocated for this. I think it's a winner politically, but I think it's also the right thing to do. They say, okay, you can't find common ground on abortion. How about this one? Tell me, we got three guys here at the table. Let's talk from man to man on this. I think that if a woman brings a child to term,
this is what you fucking up at. You fucking up because it's three men, and you're saying you're having a conversation about women. You should be bringing the women to the table. This is why this shit you talking about the founding fathers is some bullshit.
Well, this is where I think it's just like gaslighting, because it's just y'all there. What is he supposed to do? Leave the interview and go get some women and bring them back in the room? Like, come on now. He's like that. To me, that's just gaslighting and being like woke, if you will. Well, there's no women here to have the you can have a conversation with just men talking about a certain subject. It's not as if this is the council of abortion and you're just inviting, like, this is an interview.
Right.
That goes to speak to y'all, because y'all ain't got a woman co-host. So
they do now, but yeah.
They do now, but on this one they didn't. So it's like, y'all, if you cared about having a woman's perspective and you have guests coming on.
Yeah, I think that was out of pocket too, because it's like some states have given women's partners rights. So like California, for example, men have a say in that now versus being in the state of Florida. And I think even New York has adopted some of those things, because the Breakfast Club in New York, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I don't know for sure they're I'm not for sure.
No, man. You're not gonna dog my boy WB before like this.
I'm not for sure if New York has the same.
Like this. Come on, man.
Charlamagne's out of pocket.
He wasn't too bad, was he? I think what did he say? Too wretched. two wretched souls, something like that. He said 2 dogged souls, 1 wretched body, or something. Pretty much talking about how he said, no, I'm just
About to get him started.
all right, let's see. This is interesting, right?
No, Charlamagne,
a bunch
I
of white
think
men trying to make
most
policies for a
women-
bunch of diverse groups.
No. Most women here like what I'm about to say. Most men
You
don't.
got 2 women right there.
All right,
Ask them.
Listen, we have actually, and we've had a conversation. I think you may be worried about what I'm about to say,
Okay.
which is that I think if a woman brings a child to term, she should be able to make the man financially responsible for both her and the child if she does it. Period. And that should be the law of the land.
That happens though.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't happen today. Not to the scale I'm talking about. Full
That's what
financial.
child support is.
It's you do 50-50. You got 40% for the man. I'm talking about 100%. So it's 2x over. He's fully responsible for the woman and fully
So she has
responsible
no
for the child.
responsibility. She has to
Because
he
her
has to fully
responsibility, she took 9 months to actually bring the child to term. If it's confirmed with a genetic paternity test. So right now, today, 40
Until
years
18,
ago,
he has full responsibility until the child's 18.
absolutely, and full responsibility for the woman during that time.
I don't think that's bad.
I don't think it's bad either.
Yeah.
Because I think that part of the criticism of Republicans is, oh, you're just throwing women under the bus. I say, that's a fair criticism. Let's actually take that seriously and say we're all in this together. If you believe that
I
unborn
think
life
most
is
women would
life,
agree with that. I think most women would say, "Oh,
most women absolutely
would say,
would
oh, so
agree
you
with
paying for the
that.
child and for me." Yes.
Most women would agree with that, right? And that's not that's not the state of well, but then men should think about that on the front end. That's the whole point.
Ooh. Okay.
Because women can't afford that either. That's the whole. This gets to the whole.
So I think it's an interesting concept because essentially what he's saying is like many women's argument, I guess, from what he's saying is like, hey, I want to have an abortion because I can't financially take care of this baby. And if I bring this baby into this world, they're going to suffer because I can't financially take care of them. And what he's saying is like, okay, well, the man, if you get a woman pregnant, you should be 100% responsible for the woman taking care of her for 18 years as well as the baby. This puts the responsibility more on men now because you're going to think twice before going out and having sex, unprotected sex, getting with somebody that isn't married. Because essentially, if you marry somebody, you kind of, I don't want to say you're financially responsible for them, but it kind of comes with territory. It's like if I got a place to stay, you got a place to stay. If I'm eating, you eating. It's kind of already embedded in marriage. So pretty much, I think it pushes people to be more serious before they have children. Now, would I personally want it to be the law of the land? That would be a little too radical for me, but I do like the idea in the sense that it does push more self-responsibility on the men. And I think for those who are arguing against abortion and putting it all on the woman, when she's making financial decisions saying, hey, I can't afford this child, I think that it makes men think even harder before having the child. Because if she's going to have to be responsible for this child for the next 18 years, you're going to think twice about doing this if you're responsible for both of them for the next 18 years. So it's an interesting idea, I think.
Yeah, I like it. I said something similar to that probably years ago to my mentor, that people who are going to have a child or are currently pregnant should be required by whatever state they're in, or just make it a federal law, all over, that you should have to take financial literacy class. You should take childcare class. You should take different classes to inform you and to make a conscious decision if you're ready to have kids. Because a lot of people, and I've said this before, a lot of people do it for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes people want to start a family, but we also have individuals out there who are doing it to have somebody to love them, to fill a hole in their heart, to have a family that, cares about them, things like that. And I think we have to kind of create a baseline for people for them to have somewhat of a successful family. So I think having financials, I think dealing with your, I'm not even gonna say trauma because I don't like that word now. Financials, dealing with your stuff that you haven't dealt with mentally, taking the classes, learning all the information that you need to be a good parent starting off. I think we need to have those foundations. I like the idea. Sounds good what he's saying. I don't know if I would want it to be like a strict law, you know, kind of like you said, law of the land, because I don't know. I don't know
Right,
how that
because
would
then that begs the question: what happens when she gets in a relationship with a new man? So you're
Yeah.
telling me now I'm taking care of a woman who is also in a relationship, so she's getting double taken care of. If she goes and gets married, or she's just in a relationship with someone, now he's taking care of her as well, and then I'm paying their bills. I could see it being a come up for some other dude. It's like if I get somebody pregnant and some other dude is like, hey, let me come live with you. Now I'm paying his bills too. So I could just see it, going, but it's essentially what's happening with welfare right now in some of these households where they're lying, saying that they're not with the man, even though the man is there. They're, like I can see the system definitely getting abused. And I would say it may even increase domestic violence and stuff to where a dude's like 18 years of my paycheck, or I don't know, 2 years in jail for, punching her in the stomach. I don't know what
this guy, I don't
know what the time. I'm just saying, people.
That's true, though. That's true.
That is why you may push people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't if you try to force them to pay for a grown adult for the next 18 years. So I don't know.
I mean, I like it. I like it for that reason right there. Because yes, it's going to cause some confrontation going forward, but it's going to force people to think before they have sex or, get into something with somebody else. Because think about how many people now have 7, 8, 9, 10 different, like Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon has 10. I think he has like 10 different baby mamas, and he ain't got to pay no child support. He's taking care of them, but I think it prevents that from becoming a thing in life, because then you're going to be like, well, I already got one girl pregnant. I'm not going to make that mistake again. So you're going to have to pay for that mistake for 18 years.
Unless you like, hey, I ain't got no money, y'all. I'm just going to do my thing. Or I'll go get somebody pregnant, and then I'll get one of the chicks that pregnant by another dude, and he'll take care of us.
She should have laid down with the girl, man. It's simple. Should have put the umbrella on. You ought to get soaked.
Soak me up.
Yes.
Get now.
I'm already knowing.
Pause. All right, we're gonna review another video. So this is Ben Shapiro, and he's debating about Black Lives Matter, systemic racism. Yeah. I saw this video a couple years ago. Very interesting.
Of course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
Okay.
How can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
Ooh. How can you?
That boy went in. He on the Jerry stuff tonight. So that gets me in my question, okay? Gotta bounce, fellas. Thank you, Jerry, for tuning in. We appreciate the support as always.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna check out those book recommendations you gave, and have a great night. Have a great night.
Mahalo, brother.
Hello. All right, so he's pretty much, Ben Shapiro's talking about this being an issue of culture and not racism. Essentially saying, hey, look, black culture is at the root of this. Black culture's causing single motherhood. Black culture is causing black on black crimes at a high level. It's black culture that is promoting violence within the black community. It's culture, not racism. What are your thoughts on that? Like, is it culture? Is it racism? Is it a mixture? Where do you stand on that?
Man, I mean, the way he broke it down, and I don't want people to think, oh, he's using these words and these concepts. Nah, I think that's a great point, truly, because based on what you stated, racism was previously in the video, about thinking. I mean, I'm gonna just do a summary for people because I don't want. We're not gonna get that deep into it. Being superior to another group, right? Like you said earlier, I do think at this point it's become more of a cultural problem than a racist problem, because people can say, well, they're putting these systems in place, and they can say all these things. They make up everything for everything. I think specifically for an example I'm going to give is the music industry, right? They say, well, Jewish people and white people, they own the music industry, and they're the ones making these black artists, say all these things and just going down that rabbit hole of that. But for me, I think it's a cultural thing, because like, if you don't want to do music about that, you don't have to. You don't have to rap about guns, killing people, drugs, all those things. So to me, that's immediately what jumps to my mind when he says a cultural problem, because that's one of the things that black people blame their issues of going to prison, being a part of the life, living in poverty. They blame some of those things on music, what they listen to. So
let's put it in perspective. Let's put it in perspective, because we can't act like rappers are not glorified employees.
Oh, yeah, right? Of course.
They're employees. So to hold them to a different standard and say, well, they didn't have to make that type of music. Well, that's true. And you don't have to show up to work in a suit and tie. But if you want the job, if you want that check, you're probably better. It's probably a better idea.
They don't have to. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that like on an individual level, they don't have to. Nowadays,
on an individual level, they don't have to. But are we going to invest money in your rap career and pay for these music videos and pay for the marketing to push your content out there?
Yeah, if that's the case, yeah. But I'm talking about them starting off, eventually get to that point, they have a choice to walk away or to do it by themselves.
See, but this is the fallacy, though, is that yes, you have a choice, but we have to put it into context. If you're someone who's starving and someone offers you McDonald's, and it's like McDonald's is unhealthy, you have a choice to eat healthy food or unhealthy food. But it's like, if that's all you have right then and there, and you don't know McDonald's is necessarily healthy, like, you have to take those things into consideration too when these people are making these decisions. These aren't people that grew up understanding the system, and maybe they don't know how to market. Maybe all they know how to do is rap. And someone's telling them, hey, I'll pay you $1 million up front. Rap like this. They have a whole room of people whose jobs, these people get paid hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars to speak to this rapper and convince them to say X, Y, and Z. These are trained professionals who have been in the industry for years, and the rap industry is like 50 years old. So they have a system. And here you are, someone likely from the hood, little education, probably not aware of certain things.
I still think it's still a stretch for that, man, because it's like, I might be good at rapping, but I had to practice to be good at rapping. I don't think a lot of people just come out the womb spitting, you had to be Marvin's room, Marvin's room type things. But I think that's also an excuse, man, because they can put that same time into something else. It don't have to be just that.
I'm not saying that.
But then people say that. And this is a good point. to that point, then people say, well, they're racist because the people of the music industry are capitalizing on them because they know that all they want to do is rap. Bro, if I come in, it's not on those people to teach me how to develop as an individual. Same thing with a job. None of my jobs have provided me any professional development that has been effective. Everything I've learned is because of self-development. So with
And I'm
that,
not disagreeing with that.
I don't
disagreeing with
I don't
that.
consider that context though. I never considered that because it's like that's like a person playing football and going to the league. Well, I only know how to do football. Fool, what do you mean you only know how to do football? You chose to
But
put the time in that.
that's the reality for many people, though. And if that,
They
I
make it
mean,
a reality.
huh?
They choose that reality. I don't think.
I'm not disagreeing that they choose it. I think that they're making rational decisions about where they're at in their life realistically. And sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. Like I think, like if you were starting college today, like if you could take the information you have about college today and go back in time and instill that in your younger self, do you think you would make this different decisions about college? What to major in, what to do? You know, maybe
No, I
probably
wouldn't even went to college, to be honest with you.
So you wouldn't have went at all.
But college didn't teach me going to college didn't really teach me anything I already didn't know. I was just able to practice those skills I already had.
But so you went to college though.
Yeah.
And you're saying if you could go back in time, you wouldn't go. So going to college gave you the experience and the knowledge to say, I don't know if this was worth it. If I could do it again, I would do something different. That's still experience and knowledge. But somebody looking at your situation may say, he should have known that from the beginning. Well, if using that logic, everyone should have known it, but that's not the reality that we live in, where people just know everything.
I should have put the same amount of time that I put into playing sports and doing all these things to learning the knowledge. I should have put the time in.
You had to go through things in order to know that.
I mean, to an extent, but I should have been more prepared. I was too much indulging in things that didn't really serve me as much as the knowledge would, because I could have made a better informed decision.
Right. And we're not talking about what you could have done. We're talking about what actually happened in your life and what happens in everyone's life, essentially. Like we go through life, we make decisions, and then we grow, which is what's supposed to happen. It sounds like you've grown and you're looking back and you're saying, you know what? I probably wouldn't have went to college if I know what I know now. That's a normal thing to do. And what I'm saying with these rappers is many of them, they're rapping and they sign these deals or they talk about certain things. And then in 5-10 years, they go, if I knew what I knew now 10 years ago, I would have never let that come out my mouth. I'm saying it's the same thing. It's just they didn't go to college. I didn't
base it off of my environment. Oh, this is gonna get me $100 million. And I'm gonna be out of the hood. No, I didn't base it off of that. I got money to play football, and that's what I went and did. Got an education with it, obviously, but I see what you're saying. I see that side, but I also see the side of, getting to that point of saying that for that rapper, I'm in poverty, I'm in the hood, my stomach's touching my back type of mentality. It's like, this isn't the only way out though. You're good at this and it's a fast way to get paid. Hell yeah. Of course, if you get a deal and they give you 6 figures tomorrow, cool. But you're still not prepared. You're still unprepared. You just got a lot of money in your pocket now.
And I don't think that they're thinking, hey, I'm unprepared. I don't think that it's even in their sphere, because that's not where their mindset is at.
But I'm not gonna consider that context when it comes to that, because if you could put this much effort into rapping and being good at it, you could put this effort into other things.
But that's not where their mind is at, and that's not where, like, that's true for anything. Kobe Bryant could have put more energy into baking, but that's not what he wanted to do, or that's not where his mind was at. But somebody could come along and say, Kobe Bryant, you spent all this time in basketball. You could have went out there and been a professional baker with Gordon Ramsay, but it's like that's not where his mind was even at. That's not what he was thinking about. So, but if you ignore that context and you say like, well, Kobe Bryant's dad was a basketball player, that probably had an impact on him playing. And this context, if you ignore all the context, then you miss how you even got here to begin with. I mean, that's what I think is like, because let's fast forward. Now you're trying to teach the next generation. How can you do that without adding in the context? How can you do that without saying, hey, and by the way, here's what you're probably going to want to look at if you do go to college. You only know that because you went through it or because you made yourself aware of it somehow, some way.
Right.
That's the only point I'm making is like,
well, I think we have to stop using that context as an excuse though for people. And if we bring on Kobe Bryant technically wasn't poor. He just went and played basketball because his dad had the influence on that. He lived in
poor. I'm just saying why he was playing basketball. It's like
Kobe. When I think of Kobe Bryant, I don't think of him as a player though. I think of him as an overall person. Like him overall, he was a better person than he was a basketball player. But that's because he.
Right. I don't know that the other people that grew up poor. I think the main point that I'm saying is like, because your point was that, well, you could have technically focused on something else if you wanted to. You can, but that's true for anything and anybody. Right. But we only have limited time and resources and things like that and attention. So most people tend to just focus on the thing that they think is going to get them the best results. So it's like, I can focus on being a pilot, but if I don't, like someone could say that right now, like, oh, you could have focused on being a pilot. There's millions of things that I could focus on, but if I try to focus on all of those things, then I'm probably not going to get anywhere. So I think I'm just talking about the context of why people are focusing on what they're focusing on. But I wanted to ask a question.
Yep.
Is it, when it comes to systemic racism versus personal choice, is it systemic if you can change the outcome? Like, is something systemic if there's like a reasonable path? I'm not talking about impossible rarity, but there's a reasonable path that you can take to change something. Is something actually a systemic barrier at that point?
No, I don't think so.
Because a lot of what he was talking about, Ben Shapiro, with the video earlier, was it's about culture and not systemic barriers. So one of the things, and I'll pull up this list because that's kind of why I brought it up.
Well, and I say no because being a first generation college student, my first year, my first fall semester, my advisor and my professor quit at the same time, like out of nowhere. There was no kind of notice for us, and for me, I'm first generation in the school I went to. I would, looking back on them now, would say that they were a low performing school, and majority of the kids were Black and brown kids, kind of from the inner cities of Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati. I had to make a decision to take it upon myself to learn everything, to learn the catalogs, to learn what classes I need to take, to learn GPAs, all those things. Because I wouldn't say I failed, but I didn't perform to the standard that I wanted to perform for my first year, especially coming out of high school, because I didn't have support at the high school level either from counselors and things like that. But, doing that made me excel beyond expectations, beyond the dean's lists, graduate sooner than, I was supposed to, all those things. So that's why I say no, because I could have complained and said, well, the system against me and they put this barrier in front of me. My advisor quit, my professor quit. They were going to get rid of my program because I was in athletic training at first. And then they were going to cancel the football program as well. So I had a choice to make. I don't know if I told you all that before. It was for the cancel my whole life my freshman year, bro. It was crazy. Crazy. Could have been a
All
victim.
right, so here's an example of systemic racism. They talk about segregation.
Yep.
It says, another historical and current example of systemic racism is racial residential segregation, initially created by the deliberate and explicit racism codified in Jim Crow laws. Although segregation has declined since the Fair Housing Act of 1968 outlawed racial discrimination in housing, the United States remains highly segregated. Racial segregation is almost always accompanied by concentrated economic disadvantage and limited opportunities for upward mobility, such as good employment options and good schools. Because of segregation, African American and Latino people are more likely than white people with similar household incomes to live in neighborhoods with concentrated disadvantage, whose adverse health effects have repeatedly been demonstrated. Yet most health and medical studies do not include variables representing neighborhood conditions. Here's my thing, right? You have to read, I don't even want to say with this example, you have to read between the lines because it's right there. It's right there. This does not seem like a systemic issue in the way that it was originally a systemic issue. Because here's the thing. They're talking out both sides of their mouth. You're telling me right here, African American and Latino people with similar incomes and white people, they have similar incomes.
Yep.
But the black people are choosing to live in substandard conditions versus the white people. That seems like a choice. If you can afford to move somewhere else where it's safer in better conditions and you're choosing to stay somewhere, that's a personal decision.
Right.
Because and another thing is that just because you have a similar income, similar is very loose. What are we talking about similar? Are we talking about $1,000 difference a month, $500 difference a month, $300 difference a month? Because that matters. But let's say that they were equal. Let's say that their incomes were equal. And that, I mean, at that point, you'd have to make the argument that me as a black person, if I go apply for this property to rent, let's say that they're just saying, no, you're black, we're not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
But that's not the argument they're making. They just say that they're segregated and they have similar incomes. But you can choose to go live somewhere else if you can afford it.
Yep.
But your income isn't the only factor. Typically, do you have evictions on your record? What is your credit score? What is your income? How are we determining income? How long have you been at that job?
Yep.
Are those apples to apples? Like, there's so many different factors that just reading it, you think, oh, I'm at a disadvantage no matter what because I'm black and I have the same income as this white person, but I'm living in a more dangerous neighborhood. Then move. What's stopping you from going online and finding somewhere else to live? Like, I don't understand where the challenge is in that. Like, that's not the government necessarily segregating you. That's you not going and living somewhere else that's safer if you make similar money. So I don't know. That just seems like a personal choice right there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So we talked about segregation, financial practices, widespread discriminatory public and private lending policies and practices are another salient instance of systemic racism and have created major obstacles to home ownership. Okay, so they go back to the 1930s talking about banking and lending guidelines, and we end up here where we're talking about even when mainstream banking services are available in a segregated community, which this doesn't even make sense to me right here, because when they say available, it's like most of banking is done online now.
Yep.
You can go right now. Let's do this. We can. this is sad that I have to do this. It's like, even when mainstream banking services are available in a segregated community, people of color are often subjected to higher service costs, similar to, and that could be because they're at higher risk.
Right.
Similar to redlining, these practices create obstacles to home ownership, starting or expanding businesses, accumulating wealth, financing college education, and generating property tax revenues to fund schools.
Yeah.
Okay, generating property tax revenues to fund schools. If you raise the property taxes, people are going to get priced out, and then they're going to claim gentrification, right? Creating obstacles to home ownership. Yes, there may be higher service costs, but that may be because you're at a higher risk. Like, there are reasonable explanations for this. But let's test this theory out right here, because I really just want to see what happens. Like, I want to show people how easy this could be. Like, let's say right now you just want to decide that I want to see what I can afford for a home. You don't have to, it's 8:42 where I'm at. You don't have to run out and wait outside a bank to get information and get, like, you have the internet. So home buying pre-approval. You just type that in, and there'll be companies that, oh, Rocket Mortgage, check if you pre-qualify. Oh, I want to buy a new home. I'm looking to buy a new home. What can I? Oh, start my application. Boom. Oh, I'm just searching. I want to buy within the next 30 days. I'm renting right now. What's my primary address? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Fitzpatrick Street.
Alabama. I don't
know. Just put 32404 or something or whatever. Yeah, that's good.
This section will take 5 minutes. Look, we're gonna go through this. Have you found the home you want to buy? No. How will you use your new home? Primary residence. Do you know how much you want to spend on the new home? Yes. Please enter price $350,000. Okay. Where do you want to buy a home? 1, 2, 3. Let's see.
Oh, this dude. Detroit, man. You went from Alabama to Detroit.
Agent, no. 5 minutes. Oh, now they want to do a little soft credit pull. I'm not going to do everything, but I'm just showing you. Once you get past this, and then you press the button, you'll get like an approval, and someone will call you.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that much to do it. But again, I understand it comes down to knowledge. But the way that read was like, at the end of that process, they're going to be like, you black, no, get the hell off the website, and my computer is just going to shut down, and Mark Zuckerberg is going to come take my Facebook.
Yep.
Like, that's the way that it reads. Okay. So we talked about is it systemic if you can change the outcomes? Let's get into victim mentality, and then we're going to probably wrap it up after that, closing arguments. What are your thoughts on people who believe that systemic racism is holding them back? Are they automatically a victim?
In my line of work, I'd say yes. I think it's just easier to do. And everybody around them has that same mentality, which makes it easier to just accept and be a part of that, especially with the community support. And when I say community support, the people that they're around are supporting this idea and them continuing to make that idea stick to their lifestyles. So, yeah.
So what about the people that just say, hey, look, I just acknowledge that there are systemic barriers, there's systemic racism out there, but I don't let that control the work I put in. Are those people in the same category as the people that say systemic racism is the reason that I can't get where I want to be?
No. I mean, I think and I don't even think about it in the way of systemic racism as we're having conversations. But personally, like on an individual level, I just think I'm gonna have challenges, but it's not based on that. So for those people, I don't think they have victim mentality. It's more of like, I know I'm gonna have challenges in certain settings when I do get into them, and I have to learn how to navigate them.
No, I agree with that. And I'll share a personal story. Okay. So throughout college, I pretty much studied race. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, master's degree in sociology. Most of what I focused on was race, racism from a psychological and sociological perspective. So I'm always thinking about race in terms of like how it intersects with things and things like that. So when I go and there's a time where I am helping a client find a property as a real estate agent. And this client is one of those clients where they want things their way, no matter if it aligns with reality or not. Like they want it their way. So me, when my personality type is like, nah, this is the way it is, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, you want to do this, we'll do it your way. And then when it doesn't work out, they go to the racism thing. Oh, it's because the Hispanic people are teaming up against us and they don't want us to have this property. It's like, no, you didn't get the property because the comps show that it's worth more than what you offered, and I told you and you offered less. That's why you didn't get it. It's not because of some conspiracy of us being black. So they tell me like, okay, the house that we're trying to buy, it's in a mainly Hispanic area. And we think because you're a black real estate agent, that the Hispanic and white real estate agents, they're not giving us the properties that we put the offers in on. This is what they're telling me. We're going to go with a different real estate agent who's Hispanic or white. This is what they told me. I messaged back because I was confident. I knew the comps. I knew the offers they were putting in were not competitive offers. It wasn't me. It wasn't race. It was their offers. But they didn't want to listen. It was in their mind that race had something to do with it. So I message back and I say, hey, no problem. I wish you the best of luck finding your home. And I put my phone down. My phone starts ringing. I pick it up. Hey, man, what was that message about? Yeah, no, I'm happy for you. If you want to go with another real estate agent, go ahead. I'm cool, right? So they start changing their tune. They're, nah, look, maybe we'll test it out. Maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll do that. Like, I'm not giving up. I just want to test out this theory. Okay, test it out. Boom, hang up. So I'm chilling. And there was a property that I had sent across to them like 2 weeks before. This property was still sitting on the market. I said, they overlooked this property. This is the property for them. I know what they want. So what I did was, I didn't in my mind say, okay, racism is holding me back. I can't do this. What I did was I got my car. I drove to the property and I FaceTimed my client. I FaceTimed them. They picked it up. I said, hey, I'm at this property. I know you guys are going to love this property. And then I start showing them the property. Oh my God, Fitz. You right. We was sleeping on this property. We should have blah, 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 blah. Hey, we coming to look at this property right now. They meet me at the property. They go inside the property. He meets me there. He goes inside, falls in love with the property. Oh my God. I love this property. He's on FaceTime his wife. Hey, babe, when you get off work, we want to come back. Fitz, can you meet us here again tonight? Sure. We want to put an offer in. I got that property. It was listed at $410, I believe. I got it for them for $390, $20,000 less, negotiated with the seller. What is the point that I'm making with this? The point that I'm making with this is, in my mind, they're telling me my race is holding this transaction back. If I would have believed them and lost confidence in myself, oh, I don't want to be a real estate agent no more, they're right, blah, I would have never gotten my car and went over there and just FaceTimed them. And because I went over there and FaceTimed them and didn't give in to racism, guess what I got? I got a $12,000 check because of that. That was the commission on that property. So the point that I'm making is this. You can believe that racism is a thing, but the moment you start applying it to every facet of your life before you've actually analyzed the situation and truly understand what it could be, that's the moment where you're going to lose. That's the moment you're going to lose. Because once you start thinking like that, it's very hard to snap out of it. And that becomes your automatic crutch. It becomes a crutch. So that's my personal little story with how racism was at my front door, and I opened the door and said, you can't do nothing to me. Come on in. I have dinner prepared.
This guy. Assalamu
alaikum. All right. We got some people in the building. If you want to come up and add anything to the conversation, if you want to comment, ask any questions, this would be a good time. If not, we're going to wrap up soon. If you have not went and checked out the merch store, make sure you go do that. You can find the link in the comment section. It will also be in the replay for those of you watching later. And I want to thank everybody. The channel is growing. I think we're at 677 subscribers now. Getting up there, trying to hit that 1,000 mark. So thank you guys, everyone who's supporting, pushing the content out there, commenting, liking, subscribing to the channel, making sure that keep this train going. And I'm telling you now, when the channel has 400,000 or 500,000 people, 5,000 people, 10,000 people on these live streams, you gonna wish you were one of the early people to get in and come up and talk, because now you got time. But listen, thank you. This is an important conversation, systemic racism, just shedding light on an important topic, trying to be fair, trying to be balanced, trying to be intellectual. Do you have anything to add to the conversation before we dip out?
No, I think we did a good job of fighting the topic. A lot of good gems, a lot of good content. I'm good with it. Satisfied.
There is one final thing as I'm looking at my notes that we have to go over. Disparities. We have to go over this. Disparities. For those of you who don't know what a disparity is, because in the beginning of the live, I said I would go over it, so I want to keep my word. For those of you who are not aware of what a disparity is, a disparity means that pretty much there's a difference. So like when we talk about wealth, a disparity might be Black people have 10 times less wealth than white people. That's a disparity. And oftentimes disparities are used to argue that systemic racism is present in this issue or whatever, because there's a difference, there's a disparity. That is not necessarily true. Just because there's a difference and there's a disparity does not mean it's being caused by systemic racism. It could be being caused by culture. It could be being caused by personal decisions. For example, if you only make $40,000 a year and somebody else makes $100,000 a year, and you automatically say it's because of racism, well, now you limit yourself in figuring out what it is you need to do to get to the $100,000 to close the gap, right? When you don't want it to be racism, because if it's racism, that's likely something you're not going to be able to change. But if it's your mentality, if it's your attitude, if it's your personality, your lack of self-development, if it's your work ethic, your skill set, these are things that you can change. So I do want to, just touch on that briefly as we're ending this. Is just because there's a disparity, a difference, does not mean it's necessarily because of racism. There's always going to be disparities. I mean, even if you look inside your family, there could be disparities in skin tone, like the differences. There could be disparities in how much this family member makes and that family member makes. Like even within white people, there are disparities. Within Black people, there are disparities, right? Like my YouTube channel, there are disparities. There are a lot of channels that make more money, that get more views, and there are some that have less. So am I gonna sit here, oh, it's because they see a Black face and they not watching the video? No. Okay. When you see a disparity, get competitive. When you see a difference, that should excite you. The real determinant of whether that disparity stays the same is whether you stay the same. Are you going to keep doing what you're doing? Because even if the disparity is caused by racism, you're more likely to close the gap if you take action instead of take a back seat. Right? You just want to jump in the back seat and coast. You're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. No matter if it's racism, no matter if it's something that you can do yourself, you're gonna lose if you don't take action. And the quickest way to not take action is to take the responsibility off of yourself and put it onto something else, especially something that you don't even know how that they came to that data. Like you should not be using that to make decisions about whether you're going to attempt something like trying to succeed or not. It's like at a certain point, just take action, look around you, your everyday life, figure out what racism actually holding you back, and if so, how specifically, and get very specific. And if you come to the conclusion that racism is holding you back, what I want you to do is take action anyways. And what you will likely find is that you got further than you would have gotten if you did not take action.
Facts.
That's just, that's just how it is. Like just because you think there's going to be traffic going to your destination, you're probably still going to be further along that journey if you get in the car and start driving anyways, versus just letting your car sit in the garage or sit under a carport or sit on, the street parking that some people have. So take action. That's the message. That's the solution that I'm leaving y'all with. Take action, even if you think racism is an obstacle. Take action.
Yes, Sirski.
And with that being said, any closing words?
Don't let your battery die in your car.
Hey, that's the worst. That's the worst feeling. That didn't happen to me before, but luckily I had a stick shift, so you could like run with it and let it start like that.
Yep.
But what's one final question? Trying to think. What is one thing you think people can learn from tonight's podcast? Like, what do you think?
I'm sitting here watching this. I would say
it doesn't matter what you think.
The grass is green, brother. The grass is green. Yo, I would say probably self-reflection is the biggest thing. I think we did a lot of talking. I think we, explored a lot of topics and definitions and things of that nature. But I think it's more self-reflection on are you being a victim in your life, or are you acknowledging that there's going to be challenges and you're going towards it?
to add to that, I would say an importance, if you are going to self-reflect, you have to self-reflect on who you actually are and not who you think you are, because that could be a dangerous reflection. Because when you look in the mirror, right? When you look in an actual
Where'd you get
mirror,
that from?
that's just what I, through personal development, it's like, because here's the thing.
My book said that today.
If you've ever looked at one of those mirrors where it's like it distorts your figure and your shape and stuff, that's not really an accurate, you can't really make that out, right? But if you're looking at an actual mirror, it's going to reflect back. You know what I'm saying? Like what it is, like a flat mirror that's not distorting anything, it's going to reflect back what is actually in front of it. But what some people do is they like to get those distorted mirrors and they're like, oh no, now look. And they know that this is a distorted mirror, but it feels good.
Yeah.
Looking in an actual mirror doesn't always feel good.
Yeah.
But it is good, because then you can actually take an accurate inventory of where you're at so that you know where you want to be at. Like if you wanted to go somewhere that was 30 miles away, right? Would you want your GPS to lie to you? If you wanted to, like, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you're trying to send a SOS signal, would you want the GPS to lie to the people that are getting that signal just because it may look closer to them? And it's like, but they're not going to know where you're at. In other words, they're not going to be able to come save you. So how are you going to save yourself when you don't even know where you're at in life? So if you do self-reflection, make sure you're actually doing self-reflection, because if you are doing someone else reflection, then you're not giving an accurate depiction of what actually is, and what will be far off from like where, because it's like if you lie to yourself about where you're actually at when you don't make the progress that you're probably not going to make, you're basing it off the person that you thought was in the mirror instead of the person that actually is in the mirror. So it's like you're self-reflecting. I ain't got them insecurities, or I ain't got this and I ain't got that, but really you do. And now all of a sudden, when you go to self-reflect again, maybe you're in a different mood. Maybe it's accurate. It's like, so self-reflection is a very powerful tool, but if you don't know how to use it, self-reflection can be a way that people lie to themselves even though they know the truth. It can become a reality that feels good but isn't good. Yeah. So be very careful when you're self-reflecting, right? It's like a surgeon. You need to be very careful when you make these cuts. If you crying when you make these cuts, you gonna be having double vision, and you may cut 5-10 degrees off from where you should be.
Facts.
And now you're taking somebody's spleen out instead of their heart or whatever. So make sure you have accurate eyes, accurate mind, accurate mood, accurate personality, accurate everything, as accurate as you can be when you're self-reflecting. Don't be self-reflecting when you're sad. Don't be self-reflecting when you're mad. When you self-reflect, be in like a neutral condition in your mind.
Emotional state, yes.
Yeah, it'd be in a neutral emotional state, because if not,
yo,
it won't look like one of them videos where the roller coaster going off the track at the fair. It's like, you're not trying to be like that. So that's my little personal development spiel. Thank y'all for tuning in. Next week, don't have the topic yet, but we will be on probably around between 6:30 and 7. Keep y'all posted in the community tab. If you're not following me on Instagram, make sure you go to Let's Argue channel on Instagram. Actually, I think I may have changed it.
Yeah, I was looking for it, but I didn't see it.
I think, I'll have to go change that. It's Real Coach Fitz now. Real Coach Fitz. If you want to support the channel, go check out the merch. Like I said, you can also support through Cash App, $$ Peace and Love 93, $ Peace and Love 93, support through Cash App. And yeah, make sure you go check out some of the skits that I'm doing as well on there. I've been dropping skits like crazy. If you want a good laugh, you want to get some perspective. Also dropping stuff on TikTok. I think Let's Argue channel on TikTok, dropping stuff on Instagram, like I said. So go check out the Instagram. Go check out all of that. And
Maria said I was a Spanish right for dinner. I'm Mrs. Perfect. Yo.
I be wilding.
Oh shoot. All right, y'all.
All right. Peace.
From the bottom. Oh boy. This boy crazy.